Yay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending another session of Revit Radio, the last one of 2024. Can you believe it? We're into December already, which also means I got to do billing. I always hate the first Revit Radio because it means I got to do billing for my clients. But with that said, I'm Brian. This is Melissa. Most of the names I see, I recognize. It looks like there might be a couple new names on there. For those of you who do not know what this is, you ask questions and we answer them. Hopefully, you guys will put all those questions in the question and answer pod, and you will heckle and chat or correct us in the chat pod. Um, so, with that said, did you have anything you wanted to come up with and start, Melissa, before I get going on anything else? That you are like, yes, I noticed this happened.
No, everything's just running perfectly over here.
Beautiful. Well, I always do like to talk about some of the things. So since our last Revit radio session, with the exception of Revit 25, which had updated right after, right before we did this in October, there's a 25.3, but all of the other Revit updates updated as well. So 22, 23, and 24 all got updates. The 24.3.1 is to fix the schema issue. So if you guys are having a lot of those schema issues, that's the theory of what the point one update is for all those schema issues. I know majority of those happen to deal with Unify or content catalog, but I have had other issues with those schema issues. So theoretically, the 23 or 24.3.1 did fix that. There was a really convoluted progress where it says if you install this and it still doesn't fix the schema issues, you have to unload all the links, reopen up all the files with the links unloaded, save them all, then go reload all the links, and that'll fix the schema issue. So I thought that was pretty bizarre. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to go spend all this time unloading links, not removing, just unloading and doing it. Although ironically, I never open up files with links because I don't ever use them. So for me, the manage links is usually are all unloaded anyway. So that did come out, and for those of you who did not know, there was update to Autodesk licensing as well. So in case I think that actually came out, and oh, I only have Revit stuff here. They did come out with Autodesk licensing updates last month as well, if that affects you guys or anything. And I just literally saw up here that, ooh, look, there's going to be even more licensing components coming up as well. I think they found a major flaw because almost everything had an update. So I think they found a major security issue in some of the stuff they were doing. So there's been licensing updates, hot fixes for old versions, quite a few things came out recently in the last month. So I think they found a security flaw in something. Oh, so Michael said 24.3.1 did resolve the issues. So cool. So there you go. I don't know. I'm on it. I don't get the schema issues, so but there you go. So besides that, the only other thing I wanted to start with while we have waiting for people to type in questions because we don't have any currently, is I had one client call me, and this is pretty bizarre to me, but when they create grids, they actually don't use the grid numbers. They give the grids a value based on the edge of the building distance. I thought it was interesting. Nothing that I saw on that or heard anybody other doing that before. It's like as he gets, he does these buildings that are literally like 3/4 of a mile. He does cow milking facilities. So very bizarre building if you've never seen one. It's like a mile-long building, but it has to be like a 1 degree slope so the cows can walk up and out. Tons of piping to get all the crap away and then all the milk away as well. So it's very, very interesting building structure. But so he numbers all of his grids based on how far apart they are. And he's like, is there a way to automatically do that? So he's currently going in and typing in, oh, he has a dimension, then he makes the grid number match that dimension. And if he moves the grid, he has to update that. So I did go through a process with him of how to do this. So you can see that if I just start nudging this grid around, that secondary number is going to be coming up and adjusting for him. On the onset of a project, it is going to be a little bit difficult to do, but once it's set up, as you adjust it in the project, probably not that big of a deal. So my first solution was to go into his grid head and add a shared parameter. So I went in and grabbed my length shared parameter. I added it to here. He said he was probably going to get rid of the name. My example, I left the name on there and I put a little equals so I could say, hey, grid one equals this distance from edge or something like that. So again, this was just a shared parameter loaded into the grid head, loaded back into the project. But then I did have to go up into my manage, go into my project, not information, excuse me, my project parameters. And I did have to load that same shared parameter and make that shared parameter be associated to grids. Right? So go through, set that up, shared parameter, it's associated to the grids. So now if I grab any of these grids, you will see I have this length parameter in here. I could go type in any length I want. Obviously, that's going to fill out that value. However, I don't want that to be a manual process. So my example to him was go place a dimension. And I did find this as something out very, very interesting is if you're doing a dimension and if you actually go to the project base point as opposed to the internal point, you cannot do this. So I went through, did a dimension, and then you have to go grab this dimension and do a global parameter to it. So I'm gonna call this one grid A. I can spell things. And you do need to then make this a reporting parameter. And this is kind of the key thing. So it's just going to spit back that value of whatever that happens to be. So you'll see I do this. If I move this up, I move this down, that number is going to be reporting that value. Then what I can do, since this is a custom shared parameter, I can use the associate global parameter button to go to it. And I can say, cool, now this one needs to be grid A, right? So he is going to have to go through and do a dimension for every single grid. And like I said, his buildings are, 3/4 of a mile, half a mile. They're very long buildings. So he has several hundred grids going along his building, but he would be able to go do this and set this up, set up those reporting parameters, and then it would start coming through it and going out. The big concern I had for him, and the reason why I was trying to say do 1 equals 10 or 2 equals whatever, the reason I was saying that is because all the consultants are only going to see all the structural columns, all those things associated to everything. They are only going to be reporting the name of that grid. So if you're giving this to a mechanical engineer, structural engineer, which I know he uses structural engineers, you're doing all of this stuff and they're seeing the grids, they might see your grid look like this, but when they select it, or if they get like the reports for like things. So if I go put a structural column in here, right, there's probably not one loaded in here. I probably started literally without a template. Sure. We'll go load a structural column family. Structural column. Great. Looks good. That looks great. Ginormous column size here. Boom, boom. And I did the column going down. But if I go back and grab that column, then we will be able to come in here and see that this column is going to be at the grid intersection of the grid things. Where's my grid intersection? Is it because I'm below the, should it be because I'm below the grids? Level 1, level 2. Why am I not seeing the grid intersection property?
It's grayed out at the bottom of the constraints.
Oh, there it is. Sorry. Column location mark, A1, right? So it is only going to pick up on the name of those grids. So this was kind of my thought to him, is that's why I would literally go in there and say, hey, this. So I even went in and created my Cracker Jack secret decoder ring to literally say that grid 1 equals 10, 2 equals 25, A equals whatever it's going to be. So again, just a schedule looking at the grid name, that shared parameter for length, going through and setting it up. The only other thing I did do is I did go into here, and I don't know if everybody knows you can do this, because oftentimes when I do this, people are like, oh my God, I had no idea you were able to do this. But if you come inside of your labels, when you create a label in a tag family, you can come down to the formatting tab of that label. So for him, he wanted it to basically be decimal feet. I just came up, and in honest truth, he's in Canada, so it could be metric. I have no idea. But honest truth, I just came up here and said, instead of using the project units and using feet and fractional inches, let's just go ahead and do it feet. Let's do 2 decimal places and let's suppress all those trailing zeros. So that way, when I loaded that into the project, I did get the, 25, or if I nudge this over, right, I'm going to get the 0.75, the 0.6, the 0.5, etc. That's what I did for there. So I did have to mimic that in my schedule as well. So in the formatting of my schedule, I did have to go field format the length and also do feet, 2 decimal places, and get rid of the trailing zeros. So just one of those thoughts that, hey, this is kind of what we got going on there. Trying to do it intelligently. It's not like it's all manually or all update smart intelligent. We are going to have to do that manual transition of assigning global parameters, but at least it's still somewhat intelligible.
I guess he can get a starter view in a template so he doesn't have to dimension 500 grids every time.
Yeah, or at the very least have, 55 grid global parameters in there, grid 1 to whatever, at the very least do that. But yeah, in the template. I mean, he does this on all of his problems, his projects. I think this would be a decent way to do it.
Oh, yeah. So if you delete that dimension, is
No,
it?
so if you delete a dimension, you can delete a dimension. Just you're going to get the same thing you get with the equal constraint when you delete an equal constraint. As long as you don't hit unconstrained, you just say okay. You're going to be just fine in there. Those will still be there, and if I select it, it's going to show me that. Or if you hit the button down here, the reveal constraints, it will actually show those to you as well. So doesn't get rid of it unless you say no, remove constraints. Then it will get rid of that for you. So good question, Rick. So I don't know if it's a great solution. I've never heard of anybody doing this, but Caitlin's saying that she just showed somebody the other day on this. I don't know. Maybe he's not the only person doing grids based off of their dimension. He's doing it from edge of building, so we'd have to do all his dimensions to the edge of the building. I just did mine to the internal origin. Like I said, it was actually funny when I tried doing the same thing. Let me just copy a grid up. When I tried doing it and I went to the project base point, then when you go to assign global parameter to this, and you try to say it's reporting distance, nope, you can't be constrained to base points. I can do it to the project internal point, but not to the base point. So I just left them both on to point to show that to people. If you really wanted to, you could obviously go into site, turn off your project base point, and then when you're dimensioning down there, you would not actually even see that option because all you'd be dimensioning to would be the project base point. So I don't know. So there you go, kind of one of those things. Just a different solution for something I'd never heard of. But obviously, Caitlin said she showed somebody how to do this, so maybe not as crazy as I think it's going to be. All right, so I see a couple questions. Which one are we going to cover first?
I know I've so far Rick's carrying us. Come on, people.
Well, Rick, if you need to remember it, you'll just have to go through and search all the Revit radios.
Oh, he doesn't want to watch this again.
Actually, I've been trying to do short little YouTube clips when I do things like this, so maybe I'll do just a little YouTube clip. It's easier than trying to do a blog. Blogs take screen capture time, and it just takes way too dang long to write a blog.
Maybe it's there. Oh, the little otter transcript throws in screen captures now, which is kind of awesome.
Did you see the latest new Zoom feature? Maybe you haven't because you know you're usually in conference rooms by yourself. But if you go in a conference room like 4 or 5 people and they all join the same Zoom meeting, it'll start
Uh,
saying, I picked up an echo. I've turned off your sound. It's like,
right.
yay, thank you. We're not all getting ear blasted by the sound.
Finally, a use for AI. Woohoo!
So what questions does Rick have over there?
All right, let's see. We want to do annotation or sweeps first.
Doesn't matter to me. You're ordering them.
Oh, all right. So let's do the annotation. How do you make a generic annotation within a family, say a washer, dryer, switch, electrical fixture, etc., not show up in the roof plan? Oh, I hate that when you have dishwashers all over.
Yeah.
My cut plane is above the roof, but the bottom is at first floor level. I was thinking there was some special way to do this, but I can't recall.
Um, the easiest way I do it is I tell those elements, those generic annotation elements, only to show up in a specific detail level. Um, because, like you said, on a roof, I want to go all the way down to the ground, but maybe I need to go through. I am trying to figure out where I have this. Maybe I need to go all the way to the ground to see a lower roof or something else. So I might see all of those components. So when I come in here and I look and I've got this here, I will go into my visibility settings and oftentimes say, hey, only show this in coarse or medium or fine or whatever level of detail you want to see that in. Usually I have that to say only see this in a coarse level of detail. Because then once I'm in a view, and maybe I don't want to see those in any view, I could go back and say, cool, my view might be at a fine level of detail, like my roof might be at that. But then I can come down here to electrical equipment or electrical fixtures, and over here, you can change the detail level on that one element. So if I came down and said, cool, now I want that detail level to be medium or fine, I'm going to truly see the 3D outlet, but I'm going to lose all of those symbols that might have been there. So that's kind of where I try to go through and do those types of scenarios when I get into it. And again, it might not be just that symbol, right? Because this is the symbol as well. Now this is going to be showing up because if I can go turn this on, hey, I only want to see you in course, or I don't want to see you in course as well. Personally, for me, I usually leave switching outlets on as well because I want to see the symbol as well as the plate, but that's completely up to you. Or in this case, you can come in and say, hey, turn this off in plan, RCP, whatever you needed to do as well. I personally like to see them everywhere, and then just the symbols are something that I can control with the detail level. The other thing is since these are generic annotations, if you have nothing else on your roof level where you don't need to see those generic annotations, you could go into visibility graphics under your annotations tab, go down to the generic annotations and be like, cool, I just want to turn off those generic annotations. So that is a possibility as well. But for me, I always do it with the detail level on just those symbols, go into VG, whatever category that's going to be, and change the detail level on the side. I don't think a lot of people know you can actually force a detail level on a specific category. So that's how I like to do it.
Decent.
Hopefully all my engineers are listening.
And of course, we do it with many, many filters. All the filters.
Yeah. The worst part is when somebody's like, how do I get rid of the DW, but not get rid of the actual dishwasher itself or something like that. And again, if that symbol and something like a dishwasher, I mean, outlet's a little bit different because you need to see the whole outlet symbol. So if that's the case, you might need to nest this in independent of this, right? But a lot of times people are like, hey, how do I get rid of the DW in a dishwasher? Again, I do that same thing. I look at a specific detail level for that and try to do it because you can turn a toggle on it. But once you associate a toggle to it, that's in every single view, not the specific views you're looking at. So hopefully, Rick, that answers that question.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll do Rick's next question. So Rick wants to make a sweep or a swept blend that follows an angle, but the start and the end remain vertical. The entire length is one shape, but the ends are vertical. I've tried to set the working plane to a vertical plane before starting. Am I missing something, or can this not be done?
So you basically want to make a beam that will always be plumb on the ends or a column or something like that. The only way that's going to be possible is if you actually nest a void into it to cut it plumb, regardless of what angle it's at. So you're not going to be able to rotate it. And the other reason you're also going to want to do that is especially think if it was something like a pipe or even a rectangle. If I say that rectangle is 4 inches, like if it's a 2x4 going up, well, on the ends, it's actually like 5.5. So if you tried rotating the profiles to be plumb and then sweep those profiles along the path, you're actually not going to be 3.5 in the section because it's going to be 3.5 vertically. So personally, for me, I create those families, and it would be similar to my millwork families. I go create all of those families, but I add voids inside of there. So if I come back to my millwork trim, pretty much any one of these will do. I'm not going at an angle, it's not cutting it plumb, but you'll see for me, any of my millwork, when I start looking at it, I have these voids inside of here. So the reason I have all these little nested voids is because if I need to come in here and I want to cut this one off at a 45, this void will then rotate from 90 over to 45 to actually cut that sweep. So if I were to come over here and be like, cool, that end angle is going to be a 45, the void now goes into action and it goes through here and cuts this void. The void cuts it out. Right. So now I can start coming through here. You'll see that this rotated. So that's basically what I would be doing for the same type of scenario and what you're doing. Hey, no matter what angle I put it at, there's just a rectangle in here that's going to cut those. The thing that ends up happening with that, so you can see here, is I've got this end extension actual, or this end extension here. So if I go back and make that void, I'm going to open up my properties a little bit bigger. If I go back and make this void 0, watch what happens down here to my end extension length, right? So right now my end extension is here, but if I go make this 0, that value changes because I need it to go past where it's going to be so I can cut it with a void. So right here, this is just, hey, I'm coming here. I even have it returning back to the wall for an end miter if it's 0. But once I say that's a 45, it actually extends my extrusion past it. So therefore I can cut it off because otherwise I wouldn't be able to cut that angle there. So that's the only way you're really going to be able to get that to happen. Because again, even if I were to try to keep that plumb, thinking in an elevation type scenario, then you're going to go through and it's not going to be doing the same. And I have, I believe, also a vertical. This might be an older version. I believe on some of my families, I've also done the same thing. So if I nest that, then going vertically, I can do a 45 this way. So I've got just different voids nested in different views to cut it at different angles.
Nice.
So hopefully that makes sense.
Sweet. Oh, and Phil posted a blog in the comments. All right. So first question from Ben is, do you know of any good references for learning more about the Revit steel connections?
Um, Unfortunately, I haven't seen a whole lot on the Revit steel connection. So for any of you who are wondering what those are, they probably have turned them all off, but on the steel button here, they've got connections and automatic connections. I've played with them a little bit. I know I'm probably doing something wrong. I haven't had a chance to really dive in and get into these, but basically, shoot, what is it called? The AutoCAD tool, the AutoCAD Steel tool, whatever, the AutoCAD Steel tool they have, they've basically started adopting a lot of the tools they have built inside of that to come into Revit through these Autodesk connections. They've also then started doing automation on these, and these automation tools are allowing basically Dynamo to go say, hey, find all similar instances of these. Honest truth on the structure side, this is where Autodesk is putting this, and rebar is where Autodesk is putting all of the different resources into. So we see Revit structure improvements. 90% of them are going to be rebar and steel connections because they're really trying to start competing with Tekla and doing some of that. I haven't seen a ton of information on it. I've been playing with them a little bit. I get them to work on fairly simple scenarios. And ironically, the structural, I did talk to the guys at AU back in October because they did put all the structural connections on the Revit sample project. And since I modeled it, I was like, how did that go for you guys? They're like, well, it wasn't as simple as most of our demos because it is more of a real world project. They're like, we did struggle in a few occasions, but it did allow us to do all of them on there through the automation tool. So they had to tweak some things to get it going on, etc. I didn't see, Michael, anything drop for steel connections last week in 25, unless that would have been under the different add-ins. If it would have been under, instead of product updates, if I could go to actually all products, maybe it was an extension or something. Come down to Revit. God, I hate the fact that R's are so far down the list. Because we can't just type R and go down there. I know there's a search at the top, but so if I come down here to view details and we look at extensions, MEP content catalog, I don't see anything. I don't see anything here. And then there's just the libraries. So I don't see anything here that talks about there's advanced steel for Revit. Is that what we're talking about? But that was back in April. So now in the last month, I had content catalog and MEP content editor. I don't even know what the heck that is. What is that one? It's civil 3D. What? Cool. Don't know what that is, but that did come out.
Oh boy.
Boy. So, but 25, for in Revit 25, they did make significant improvements on the steel connections. And I know the futures, the Revit futures also talks a lot about some of the steel connection tools that they're going to be doing as well. So like I said, the rebar and the steel connections are two big places that they're trying to get in there. But I haven't seen anything on the like where to go to find any more of this stuff than literally just going to the help into the steel connections. The one thing I do know, and I believe this is still true to date, that if you're using really old Revit families, they will not work at all. The Revit families must have, sorry, they must have the section shape associated to them along with all the appropriate data. So I know when they came back out with these, God, it was like in Revit 20 or something like that, that if you're using the old non-ACES shapes, they did not work at all. And the non-ACES shapes that they had literally didn't have this value inside of here for section shape. I know my family, because when you add that in there, it gives you all of these structural analysis tools here. These do need to be filled out in order for those tools to work. This is what it's looking at. So I know for me, I actually kept all of the old stuff in my families. So all of these parameters down here are the old school families, and then these are all of the new ones. So I can use either type catalog for it or merge both type catalogs together. So I could use the old school ones or the new school ones if we needed to. So I did this for a lot of my clients. I literally don't need any of these down here because you can see these are filled out by the type catalog as well. So, but yes, if you are trying to use it and you're having really struggling, make sure you're using the ISIS the shapes inside of there.
Great. It's a good thing. Okay, well, we should go to Ben's next since we're already structural.
Okay.
So for graphical column schedules, is there a way to incorporate the base plates and anchor rods used from the Revit steel connections and reference a detail for the base plate and anchor rod layout?
Oh, God, no. I really wish we could. The graphic column schedules, if you really want to be using I have a column in here. Woohoo, we can go create a graphic column schedule. If you're really trying to go create a graphic column schedule and really get it to work, the only way that you can start to get this is if you start nesting in some of the top connection and base connections inside of here to display that. But then if you're starting to try to get into this and really look at something like that, then it's all dumb and it's not picking up on what the actual connections are doing. So no, it would be really cool if in our visibility graphics, we could actually turn on all of these structural connections. I have not seen those come in and go into play at all yet. So for me, I've been nesting in, when I have clients who want to use this, I use the little top connection symbols because then I can kind of get some sort of weird looking symbol inside of here to try to get what I was trying to say, cool, this is what I want that to look like. That's been what I've been looking at and kind of getting into, but now really hasn't worked too well. Or the other workaround is you can create a tag and have the tag have some graphics to it that might be extracting some of that data. Because this is a view, not a schedule. I hate the fact that they actually call this a schedule, but we still can come into the annotation tools and tag inside of here, right? So what I've always told people is go ahead and do a tag, right? And tag, where's my tag by category? I probably don't have a tag loaded because I literally started without a template on this one. But go load your tags to call out what the beam sizes are. But you could even do a tag for your top, for connections at the top and the bottom or shared parameters or whatever. But again, you're tagging the column, not the connection that would be associated to it. So no, unfortunately, Ben, not really.
Is this where we hear somebody saying, put it on the Revit ideas? Because everybody loves Revit ideas.
Yes, actually, I had to post that in the civil chat. Here's the civil chat ideas forum page.
Yep, see, Tom knows. Put it on Revit ideas so it can get ignored by a lot of people. Let's see. Let's jump to Sarah since it's kind of structural. So it says we have a roof with wood joists that we want the top and bottom eaves to be square to the joists, not vertical. How can we model this?
Um, Theoretically, if you're just so Sarah, follow-up question, are you actually modeling the joists? Did I open up a file?
Yeah.
No. So you just want,
Oh, structuralist.
so do you want your roof to look parallel or do you want so you're not modeling those, so you want the roof not to be plumb. Is that what your bigger question is? So not the actual joist, but the roof itself. Because the joists by default are actually going to always come up square. So if you're modeling a joist, it's going to come up square no matter how you model it. There is a workaround for personally, my beams have all of that in there, so I could go type in whatever angle I wanted to get that. But just so you know, if you didn't want to do that, If you didn't want to do that, you can actually draw in a reference plane. And this is a little known feature that a lot of people don't know. You draw a reference plane. If you draw in a reference plane, you can then use that reference plane and the cut tool together. So I can go say, I want to cut this by the reference plane, this. I'm not going to do all of them. And then you'll be able to see that by doing that, I've now got plumb cuts on these. If you really, really want to have fun with that on the structural tools, you can draw a reference plane in at the compound angle. So yes, I drew a reference plane in at the angle of this roof, and then I could use that to cut all of these to get my compound angle on those. So it is possible. Again, I did those with a reference plane. I'm not saying it's something anybody would ever do in reality. It was just something I was going to show there. But architecturally, if you're looking at, hey, I just don't want this roof to be plumb down here, that's what this rafter cut is for. Now it's really, really bizarre because you're like, cool, I want to go do a rafter cut, but no, I want to do this as a two-cut square. You do it, and all of a sudden you end up with this, what the is this kind of roof going on here? Right? You end up with a doorstop, not a freaking roof. The reason for that is once you set the two-cut square or the two-cut plumb, regardless, it then opens up the fascia depth. So if I go say this is going to be a 6-inch fascia depth, it's then going to cut that square at 6 inches. If you want it just to be thicker than your roof, you know, always want the roof to be completely square, just go make it some ridiculous number that's going to be thicker than the size of your roof. So yes, that's how you're going to do it. If you're saying it's just a shed roof, which you did, I see, look, I'm already preempting that. You cannot get the top to do that. This only works on the bottom edges of it, of a roof, not the top. So if I go do another roof, we'll just say create similar. That is not create similar. Draw a rectangle. Woo. I only need, no, I don't need more lines. I don't need those to define a slope. Probably got some ridiculous slope we would not do for a shed, right? Again, I can come to this one and say, give me the two-cut square, but I cannot get it to do it at the top. The top is always going to be plumb on a shed roof. You could, it would require a whole bunch of different things. You could go put a fascia on here that had a triangle profile and sweep it along the edge of that. So if you did want to come in here, you can go into your roof drop down. In your roof drop down, you'd be like, cool, I wanted to go do a fascia. You could put a fascia on here. You could have that fascia a wedge shape. Obviously, if you have a 412 versus a 612 versus a 912, those would be different sweeps. But you would be able to go through and set that up with a fascia and then just assign it the same material. So that's the kind of workaround if you truly want to get that displayed.
Does the reference plane trick work in sections or elevation views? And or
well, it doesn't work for roofs. It only works for structure. The only thing I've ever seen that a reference plane can cut are structural components.
Oh, boo.
And the other hilarious part about it is when you do it originally, if you like, it will cut the less of the object. So if you're like, cool, I wanted to cut this end of the object, not this end, you have to like literally cut it and then move the reference plane to the other side to get it to work. So we'll never cut the majority out. We'll only ever cut because you don't get to decide which side it cuts. It just does one side. I've tried drawing the reference planes different directions. Doesn't matter.
It's a feature.
Yeah, so I've done this. I actually have a profile that's just literally a right triangle, but you wouldn't even want that as a right triangle because you'd have to have the bottom at an angle. Well, it would be a right triangle, but yeah, I don't know. But you'd be able to do it. Just go create some profiles. Cool. So I think that's all of the questions for Sarah.
Well, there you go. Rick's got some add-on. What if you put a positive and a negative slope on both sides of that roof?
Then it's a hip roof, not a shed.
Oh,
I mean, if you still make it a -4, yeah, delete that because you're now going to be.
and Sarah was already there trying it.
Yeah, I thought you could do a negative. Hmm. I don't know why it's not even letting me do it as a negative. Oh, probably because, yeah, this is the bizarre part. When you're playing with roofs, if you have any of the two cuts set up, it doesn't let you do a lot of things on the roofs. 412. Now I can do it. But you'll see now this side, now if I come back here and say instead of plumb cut, 2 cut square with the 2 foot, cool, delete elements, delete, yeah, it's not even gonna let me do that there. Yeah, once you start doing this 2 cut on the roofs, it can start limiting how you can generate your roofs. It's really bizarre. And it
What
could
if you
be
did a flat roof and did a slope arrow?
same scenario.
It does the same thing.
If I just make that 6 inches will work. Yeah, no. Yeah, once you start saying the 2 cut on this, it starts limiting what you can actually build in your roofs, which is why it's not the default. Is there a problem mirroring the fascia? When you do a fascia, you have the capability in its type properties. No, you're right. With fascias, you don't. I hate the inconsistency on freaking Revit.
Ah, yes, roof
On
by
some of the sweeps, you can say flip or mirror. Oh, it's this button over here. You can flip it here. It's not in the properties. It's stupid flip toggle. You could do a roof by extrusion, but when you do the roof by extrusion, you're only drawing the top line. So you literally are still going to have the same problem. It's going to extract perpendicular. And when you do roof by extrusion, I don't believe you even get the option for 2 cut square or anything like that either. So let's see, grid A, we'll go use grid A. We'll go into this elevation. We'll come over here and do roof by extrusion. Grid A, I said. Nope, that's not A. Grid A. Cool. Sure. We'll use the top of chimney as our level. Draw that. For the record, for those of you who don't know, if you like, I wanted this to be a 412 pitch. If you start with equals, you can actually do the arctangent of 412 using your parentheses, and it will give you the correct slope. That was above, so it should have been different, but you get the point. The angle should have been down here, not up here. But yeah, if you ever have that, you can go in and be like, cool, I know I need that to be a 412. Now, if I grab this, I can just say equals the A tan of the rise over the run. And now I've got a 412 pitch roof. But you're going to end up with the same thing. And I do believe, yeah, it's a little bit different. You get rafter cut here. It's funny because it organizes it different. I don't know, but 2 cut square, but then you don't get fascia depth. Oh, you do. Just changes it. There you go. 2 feet. But again, still at the top, it's still going to be plumb. Yeah, I think way, way back when we lost the fascia depth whole scenario when we did it, but so sorry, Sarah, you can't get the top. The only way I found to do it is do a stupid fascia on it and call it a day. And then you have your fascia, your 412 fascia, your 612 fascia, your 312 fascia. What's the next one? I think we killed the roof extrusion.
I think we killed it. Let's see. How about Brian's question? Hi, Brian. Brian says, are there any tips for locating a downlight at a specific location in the domed ceiling? I have no problem hosting the light to the ceiling, but I'm struggling to get the center of the can at a specific dimension from the center of the dome, and equally in a radial pattern.
Yeah, that's one of the worst things ever because I'm assuming when you say this, you're obviously hosting it onto it's a face-based whatever, and you're trying to host it in a specific location on a damn curved surface. That is flipping hard to do. The one thing I have found to do, Brian, and you can try this, is have like a reference plane or something set up. So sure, oops, I guess I can do it in here right now. This has nothing loaded into it. I'm gonna do it in here. So if I were to go do some sort of like dome or mass or something like that, what I'll do is I'll go create a reference plane where I want that to be. And then oftentimes you can place that object nearest to it. And then you can use your align commands to align it either in plan, but more than likely you're going to have to do it in section because you've got to rotate it around. That's about all I could sit there and think of because when you're trying to place that perfectly into a dome onto the center part, it is a royal pain in the ass to start getting face-based things to do that. I have done nested that object into an adaptive component because an adaptive component will give you greater control on grabbing that grip And as you move that grip to line up with the reference planes, it will actually snap a little bit better. So you can grab the adaptive point, move the adaptive point, and as long as you know you're set up to be perpendicular to the host on that adaptive point, it should work for you as well. But that just becomes, when you start talking about hosting things onto a dome, it's a royal pain in the ass. And I've also seen the fact that, and I haven't done it lately, but it used to be when you did domes, you would get two semicircles rather than one whole half sphere, right? You'd get a quarter, you'd get a lemon wedge, not half of the lemon. So when you would start to rotate it to the other side, you could even start the adaptive component element could start rotating and flipping and doing bizarre ass shit. So yeah, that's just a royal pain. I, honest truth, try to, like I said, draw a reference plane, a grid line, something that you could try to use the align command in a section, assuming that family has a strong or named reference plane to align to.
And I just say, Brian, don't worry about it. Clearly, the like 14-year-old on site will get it perfect. Just
Yeah, the
general
guy the
note
guy
that
drilling the hole in
fine.
the dome is not going to get it right anyway. So I
He's
usually
gonna
just,
be
honest
right
truth,
on
I just
it.
usually use the damn nudge key and nudge it to where it looks like it's close enough. As long as I can do a dimension to that reference plane, then it's within 0.017 of an angle. I'm good. Yeah, draw layout detail lines. But again, if you're trying to host to a dome and always be perpendicular to that dome, you've got to get a surface-based object, and
Mhm.
layout detail lines just don't do shit for you when you're trying to host to a curving surface or a warping surface or anything. Cool. So what's our next one?
Right. Should we check out Beth's link
Sure.
on Blue
Hopefully
Sky?
Beth's not sending us any porn or anything that I just clicked on.
I clicked on it first, but I also trust Beth.
Because, I wouldn't expect that from Beth personally, but for her just to screw with me, I might actually think she would screw with me that way.
This is fair. This makes me feel like maybe I should get off my butt and actually, that's literally the first time I've ever even been on Blue Sky.
Hmm. Oh, really? Yeah, there's only like three or four people that I still follow on Twitter because they haven't made the jump to Blue Sky. But I don't know if anybody's been noticing, pays attention to world news. Yeah, South Korea, the crazy happened in South Korea today. Blue Sky had it instantaneously. None of my other news feeds did. So to me, it's just pretty bizarre. So I don't know. Beth sent this for fixing. What are we fixing?
Does it have sound? I don't even
Good on
know.
time.
Oh, there we
Okay,
go.
this one is going to be for Darren. So Darren, for blue
Oh,
beam,
the sound is not related.
we are talking false.
If
And
that's
my
one thing in
next
Blue Sky is like if you full screen it, you can't get rid of the sound.
one,
To mute it first. Oh, what is this for? Oh, it's another awesome webinar. That's what she's telling us about. I thought it was like to answer a specific question. Oh, yes, the long lines and different dimensions where they're right on this side and wrong on the other. Oh, yeah, I've had that. I particularly have a project that's currently doing that. No, it's not even the fact that the line may not be straight. So this is the weird part to me. I have a project that a client has, and there's a wall drawn and a grid drawn. And on the first floor, there's 6-inch dimensions all the way around, going out 10 decimal places. When I get to the third floor, the one side is 6 point blah 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 blah, but the left side is still 6. So theoretically, that means one of the walls is not plumb or the grid is not plumb. Should still be able to go. I do not go out as far as decimals will allow, only because I don't go out past 10, Beth, because the computer rounding in Revit pretty much is only accurate to 10. So I have found times where things will be perfect at 12 and then literally nothing changes. I open up the file and now it's rounded, it's different, and I get that bizarre number. So for me, I only ever go out 10 decimal places because of the computer rounding issue. And honest truth, in my template and every one of the files I work on all my clients, I create what's called a working dimension. The dimension's orange. And one of the things I do inside of that whole theory is that working dimension when I do it, and I do go out that far with those decimals, do primary units, secondary units. Like I said, I go to inch. I do inches, not feet. There's a reason for this. And then I do custom and I go out 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I suppress trailing zeros, right? I don't do feet because if it's feet and it's like, 3 inches, then I get 0.333333. So underneath my dimensions, I always do this. I always set this up. I always do it below. Come on, I do below. And for my working dimensions, I also change it to a bizarre color. I like the text to be a weird color, only because then we know it's a working type dimension. So whatever you want to do, orange, pink, purple, I don't care. And then now I have this and I start to get those values, right? So again, you can see I've been nudging these things around. So it says 6 5/8. Obviously it isn't. But this is the reason why I do inches is because down here, if this literally was like uh, do, 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 you know, 9 feet 3 inches. This is going to be point 3 or 9 feet 4 inches, whatever. But now I just see it. I also tick off the suppressed trailing zeros. So that way I can just zoom really quickly and see that, oh, the ones that have this in here, really long dimension strings below are the ones that are not accurate. So I do it with inches, not feet. Always do it that way. And then I only go out 10 decimal places. I think you guys have something similar, don't you, Melissa?
Yeah.
Do you guys go out 12 decimals or do you know?
Oh, I think we go all the way.
Okay.
Sorry.
I used to for years, until I just started realizing that, once I get to 12, it's going crazy. 10 is where I've decided the number is.
Okay.
And I haven't had any issue with 10. Ironically, this is how I found out that the old school, and if you guys have old templates, you might want to check this. But the old school template, when you did a dimension from level 1 to level 2, and you move that dimension around, I actually would see it was different on the one side than the other. So in one of the old templates, I'm talking this is way out there. In one of the old templates, one of the levels, level 2 was not straight. And most of my clients have created from there, and I laugh. I come in and I do this. I'm like, yeah, you guys need to delete level 2 and recreate it. They're like, but we have hundreds of views associated to that. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, but your level 2 is not level. So there was some sort of bug, and like all the Autodesk programmers, like, that's not supposed to happen. Levels can't be drawn not flat. I'm like, well, they are. So they did fix that in the template a long time ago, but that was right when we were making the transition from not Andrew, oh my God, Anthony to Harlan as the project manager. Because I told Anthony and then he left, so I had to tell Harlan again as well.
He's like, good luck.
He's like, I love that.
Welcome to the job, sucker. Uh,
Okay, so
yeah.
what else we got? 10 minutes left.
All right. So we have one last from Ben
Mm.
asking if there is a way to control formatting for creating dummy schedules using Revit and Excel, or will
Um,
it format the way you show it in Excel?
yeah, definitely not because, or to me, like, I'm not gonna say definitely not. A lot of it's an interpretation thing, and I know what you're talking about. I don't use Pyrev for that. I have ID8, but ID8 runs into the same problem as so does shoot, the other one that I use as well. The problem with it is when you're looking at Excel, you're looking at everything in points. So you're creating a column height based off of points, a column width based off of points. The text is based off of points. So there's no direct conversion from that point to what this is, right? So if you're thinking, cool, when that comes in, I want that text to be 330 seconds, that would be great. But unfortunately, there's no point equivalent convert text, wait, height to inches, right? There is a thing over here. So if I'm like, cool, I want this to be 330 seconds, or I'm just going to say 1/8 because I know what 1/8 of an inch, 0.125 of an inch, then that's a 9-point height value. Unfortunately, 330 seconds is not one. What is 330 seconds decimal? I used to know this. 0.0625, I think. So it's like, ooh, it's 4.5. So you've got to go through and start trying to do all of those conversions in Excel and make that stuff in Excel the right height for Revit to understand. That's the biggest thing for me. And ironically, I think this needs to be a higher decimal accuracy than this. So it's got to be like, oh, this is technically 4.5016. and it's not the exact same as what you see in Revit, so Revit generates its own style. So that's just the big thing for me when you're talking about it and you're really trying to get into it. You've got to try to get this converted. You've got to try to do all that in Excel properly. So when you do it and bring it across, I use Ideate Sticky, which is very similar to this. And in the Ideate Sticky, you can go change it. Oh, let me just grab this and change it in Revit. But if it updates automatically because something in the Excel file changed, then it automatically converts it to the new text style again. So anytime there's a, hey, I've got to re-update this or re-import this back in, it converts it all back to whatever it's going to be. I've just learned to live with it or tell people to do smart schedules. One of the two. Point zero, yeah, thank you, Rick. 0.0625, oh yeah, that's the 16th. See, my brain was now thinking 0.9375. Yeah, so that's your point height equivalent. I don't think you can do that in Excel or Word. Oh, it's 375, not 65. I fat fingered that. But it's still going to be some bizarre. No, maybe not. Maybe it's 6.75. Yeah, so you can try to do that, but that's the thing. And so again, if you're like, well, I'll do it at 7 in Excel, that's close enough. Well, it's not, because then that comes out as this bizarre number, and then Revit tries to recreate that text type. So I have not found any of those that you can basically say, hey, here's a mapping of if I see this point height in Excel, I want it to be this Revit text style. If there is one of the items out there that does that, please let me know. And then as for like column widths and column heights, mostly we're usually talking about the widths. With widths, it's kind of, they try to, again, interpret it the same way. So yes, I've had things where it looks formatted perfectly in Excel, you bring it into Revit, it's close, but it's not exactly the same. So that's all I got for you. And again, I used a couple different ones, but none of them I've found do it. And if you're using a lot of it, you just have to understand that cool, you're gonna get a weird, bizarre text style called import from Excel or PyRevit or whatever it is, and that's just what you're gonna get. So hopefully.
Oh, and Simon says, what if you do it in metric? Well, that's just un-American, Simon. Come on.
Hmm.
Tim wonders if AutoCAD does a better conversion since it supports import out of the box.
AutoCAD, I believe it used to create its own text style as well, which drove me crazy as well, because you could do a smart table. No, because with AutoCAD, what it was doing, if you did it as a smart table, it would actually bring in the data from Excel. Because right, they call it a smart table, but you're just putting fields in. So it literally wasn't looking at the size of the text or the width of the columns. It's just saying, hey, grab this data and bring this data across and use this table style to do it. So that looks like all the questions. Wow, we ended 5 minutes early. That's just not like me. It means I'm going to get to my next meeting on time. Well, with that, we're almost at the top of the hour. So I appreciate everybody spending another almost hour of usable, billable time to, waste it here with us and learn from us and give us tips as well. It is the end of the year, so I guess next year we'll be doing it'll be our 2025. Yay! So hopefully we'll see you guys in January. When is the next one? It's not like January 1st, is it? It's not like a stupid day, is it?
Dun, dun, dun.
No, it's a Wednesday, so it'll be the 7th. Good. So we're not going to be like right after, for the New Year's Eve and getting drunk, everything. Oh my God, did you guys realize that 2025 starts with WTF? Wow, that explains the whole year.
That explains this last whole.
2025, we're starting with WTF. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Good times.
All righty. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate you spending the time, and we will hopefully get to see you next year. And again, tell your friends, your families, your coworkers, come spend an hour billable time wasting it with Brian and Melissa. Thanks, everyone.